Greetings and bienvenue, crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Have you ever witnessed a paranormal phenomena in a woods? Closest I came was witnessing a green meteor whip out of the sky and hit the ground somewhere in the woods. There was this huge green flash of light. I thought it had to be aliens, but my dad kept saying it was just a rock. I spent years looking for that motherfucker around where I thought it landed. Never came up with nothing. Now that I'm an adult, I should go back with a fucking metal detector. Sadly, no ghosts though.
I like reading X stuff, but I'm a huge skeptic and love the thing the most that withstands rigorous examination. Unlike 99% of the campfire story zoomy shit they call paranormal now. I've seen some UFOs. No IEL mouse dumbass, UFO just unidentified shit. Most likely distant drones. Seen some people doing shifty things like a van with no lights on slowly rolling on a dirt road in the dead of the night with no plates but nothing special. Feeling of being watched is common, and chances are, you are. There are a lot of people, hunters, foresters, other hikers etc. in forests with binoculars. The closest to paranormal shit I encountered was what friends take into calling the silence. When suddenly the air takes on an eerie, subdued, otherworldly quality. Everything goes silent, or at least hushed, and you get this feeling of being watched along with a huge urge to hide. I trusted my instincts enough to do it without any shame, but after a few minutes it passed and nothing happened. A bird started to sing again and the usual hum and chatter of the forest came back. I also encountered the witching night when you are alone in the forest and things are just shit. You feel like shit, you think like shit, you feel like you are being watched again, and all too self-conscious about everything you do and ever did. And seemingly every train of thought just leads to more sad, despairing, and just downright shit stuff. Sometimes even old childhood memories about the tritest of shit, like when you dropped a slice of cake and cried about it when you were 4, are flooding back. It's like you're in purgatory for a while, always thinking the worst of everything. Nothing, alcohol, runner's high, can really dispel this. Pretty sure the last two are caused by atmospheric shit, infrasound, or geomagnetic effects like the sullen mood that sometimes precedes storms and makes animals agitated too, but strange to experience in person. The time I encountered an earthquake was like that too.
I've had a lot of encounters in Innawoods. Some felt supernatural and some were very real. This was the scariest encounter I ever had while out. I was hiking off trail and stumbled on a shelter. It was half buried, so the roofline sat fairly low. It was positioned by a big oak tree. I almost missed it. It was so well concealed. A lot of people build makeshift camping shelters out here, me included, and it's an unspoken rule that anyone can use anyone's shelter to camp in, make additions to, etc. Thinking this was one of those shelters, I walked up but noticed there was a door made of pallets, which is uncommon. I approach and peer inside and see a bunch of glass vials, pipes, burners, and a caustic, almost sweet smell hanging in the air. I quickly realized it was some meth lab or something and that I didn't want to be anywhere near this thing. I then hear footsteps approach behind the oak tree and I immediately go into fight or flight. Since I was unarmed and 14, flight it was. I sneak towards a bush 50 feet away from the door and roll into it. The tiny amount of noise I made drove the guy to charge around the tree and yell. By God's grace, a deer decided to run by at that moment and he didn't look any closer as he went into the shack. I stayed in that bush for 3 hours or so until nightfall, rolled out when the birds were making a shit ton of noise, and ran like hell when out of earshot of the shack. My mom smacked me for being late. I told her what I found. She got even angrier with me for going off trail and smacked me again. Guy got arrested less than a week later. Turned out he was cooking drugs and was a wanted Minecraft YouTuber. Got lucky that day.
July 2020, my brother and I went on a 5-day packing trip through the Uintas in Utah. Third day on the trail, we talked about spooky Innawoods stuff all day. End of that day, we found a pretty little lake to spend the night. We sat around the campfire talking about skinwalkers till about 10 and then went to bed. I was just about to sleep when my brother came bursting out of his tent yelling at me, asking if I had just said hi to him. I said no and came out of my tent to meet him. He said he heard me say hi to him as if I was right next to his head in his tent. Our tents were about 20 yards apart from each other, so there's no way it was me. We laughed it off and went back to bed. 20 minutes later it happened again. We both got out and laughed it off again, thinking he was maybe just having weird dreams. 30 minutes later it happened again. This time I came out with my gun and fired off 5 or 6 rounds in different directions. I moved my tent next to his in case it happened again, but we never heard anything the rest of the night. It spooked us both because he said whatever it was sounded exactly like me. I think we attracted a skinny with all the spoopy talk around the campfire.
Yes, maybe. There is a highway in my county that extends far north. Desolate and lonely, it's known for its remoteness and fatal accidents. Partway up this highway, a tiny mining town is nestled in the hills of a unique rock formation that is rich with metals from an ancient meteor. There is one road that leads up into the mines. It's closed to the public, and winds its way through the rocky cliffs, past lakes and rivers. And quite frankly is a gorgeous adventure. I was traveling back from a job at the mines one evening. The sun was setting, and in the hills that means the light cuts in and out along the road. One moment you're in deep shadows and sunset, the next you're blinded by the brilliance of the low sun. It was stunning. I slowed to a crawl in my truck, and as I rounded a corner, I almost hammered the brakes. The road fell away on my left side, down a steep ridge towards a glassy lake that reflected the enormous pines clinging to another rocky ridge. The sun cut through my windshield, but the rock face across the lake was in deep shadows. I don't know how to explain what I felt or saw. It was like I was looking through the earth, seeing something larger behind it. And at the same time it felt like the rocks, the trees, and the water were staring back at me, also looking right through me. I felt elated, terrified and amazed. Euphoric. The entire moment lasted for only a few seconds, and like a dream the feeling has faded somewhat. But I still remember the feeling.
Not something I witnessed, but something I experienced. When I was a teen with my hunting dog, only one time in my life had I seen her be scared. We ran into a mountain lion that wasn't interested in us, but she was scared to death. Anyways, we went down a ravine and it just felt wrong. Was really quiet, and just seemed totally empty of anything. No bugs, no birds, nothing. She started hunkering down and I kept looking up expecting to see a big cat in the trees or something. She was just whimpering and following me. I just kept searching. Before I knew it, it was well after dark and I was bleeding all over. Dehydrated and just fucked up. No idea what or why, just lost a fair bit of time to some empty-ass ravine. Grandma swore it was fairies. Local police said it was probably some leak from old mines. Either way, it is a weird spot in my head, as I can remember it to some extent, and then just lose time.
I have also encountered the silence and witching night. It's so weird because the witching night is essentially the best you can get to purgatory. It happens to me around sunset unless I'm building some autistic shit in the woods. I guess idleness and sunset trigger it for me. Anyways, onto my own story. You are gonna think this isn't real, but you can't make this shit up. In the North Carolina woods, middle of nowhere, hiking to the creek that I was building a hut at, I hear a monkey-like hoot. I look up into the trees and eventually I see the thing. It was maybe 7 feet tall and was completely jet black, like the texture was not loaded. It was on the top of a dying pine tree, so I had a clear visual. I tried talking to it. No response. It just stared. It starts crawling down the tree. Hell no, JPEG. Luckily I'm strapped. When I was 11 or 12, my granddad died and I inherited his rifle. It's an over-under 22 calories rifle 4/10 shotgun. Single shot, hammer action. I'm a really good shot with it because it handles really well, and I was naturally a good shot with revolvers and rifles. I take the barrel, snap it open, and put in a 22 and replace the bird-shot shotgun shell with a self-defense slug. Thinking there's no way bird shit is taking out that thing, I pull back the hammer. It clicks into place and I fire a 22 calories into the sky, hoping to scare it off. It's not phased. Fuck. Switch my mode and fire a slug right into the fucker's center mass. Just like my dad taught me. It falls to the ground and doesn't make a thump. Crack my barrel open and switch out the spent shells for new ones. Sprint over to the fall site. Sweating bullets, I can hear my heartbeat. It was gone. I haven't told anyone since, but I got my ass home after that and for a while slept next to my shotgun. Freaky shit, man.
I saw something like this once. I wasn't out in the woods, but there are trees and a big ditch very close to my house, and I'm surrounded by pastures on the other side. It was raining one night and I sent my dog out to pee for the last time of the day. I stood on the porch and she was less than 5 feet away when I saw her stiffen up and focus on the side of the house, which is about 15 feet away from where we were. That's the side of the house where the trees and ditch are, and there were no security or street lights nearby, so it was dark in that corner. I did have the porch light on, but it wasn't very bright. It's one of those bug light bulbs, or at an angle to illuminate that spot. I stepped out quickly to see what had gotten her attention, and there was this black void in the shape of a big dog standing right at the corner of the house. It was darker than what was behind it, and I couldn't make out any features other than a tiny white stripe on its chest. Couldn't see its eyes or face or anything. Just its shape. It just stared at us and didn't move. I grabbed my dog and went back in.
Cannock Chase is really nice. Also a paranormal hotspot if that is your thing. There seems to be sightings and legends of all types of shit up on the chase. UFOs, the pigman, the dogman, the lady of the chase. Wolf sightings, big cat sightings, and even reports of Bigfoot sightings. I myself have had strange experiences up there. Well, this happened on Halloween. I was staying on this campsite up there, and it was my last night before going back home. I was bored in my tent, so I thought I'd go for a short walk. It would have been around 10 p.m. Anyway, so I'm walking down this trail in the dark, and I can hear all these people shouting at setting off fireworks. I walk down maybe about half a mile when I think I should turn around and go back to the campsite. I didn't really want to encounter rowdy people, and I had a train to catch the next day, so I turned around and headed back. As I'm heading back, I see an animal jump over the trail in one leap. This trail must have been 10 feet wide, and it looked just like a puma, I guess about 5 feet in length. So I ran up to where it leaped, and I shined my torch where it went, and saw its reflecting eyes looking at me. I tried to get closer, but it ran off. My torch was kinda shitty, and I wish I had a more powerful one with me so I could have had a better look, but it was definitely some kind of large feline. Mostly probably a puma or cougar. I've also seen evidence of rituals, flower petals left out in a circle, etc. I could have sworn I've heard voices in the woods that would stop when I'd stop walking and start up again. That happened to me twice up there in different parts of the woods. Now maybe I was hearing shit in that case. No doubt that is a logical explanation, but I go walking in the woods at night all the time, and I've only ever experienced this on the chase.
Crazy stuff, mate. What made you sure it was a feline rather than a deer or something? Seems like there's loads of big cat sightings over there after a quick Google. Must be something to it, I guess. The occult shit doesn't surprise me given it's the nearest decent forest to Brum Black Country. Bet there's loads of Wicca LARPer groups that do their shit up there. Still interesting to find though. We'll have to try a bit of a night walk there at some point. The mind does play tricks walking through quiet forests, but hearing full-on voices is a step further.
It had a long tail that wasn't bushy, so definitely not a fox. The shape of it looked kinda like the puma logo. Also, it was too low to the ground to be a deer. Yeah, the voices thing spooked me. I mean, they were clear enough that you could hear they have the local accent. I'm from the south, so that aspect of it stood out to me.
Yeah, makes you wonder if something like that, an escaped exotic pet or something, could survive undetected in the forest. It would definitely have enough food with all the deer around, but you'd think someone would see tracks or carcasses or something. It's not a big forest and gets a lot of foot traffic. Dunno, could be some paranormal shit. Oh, that's really strange. Could you make out any words?
I couldn't make out any words. I'd stop and it would be dead silence. I'd take a few steps and the voices would start back up again. It sounded like there were people hanging out on either side of the trail, but I hadn't seen anyone out there for more than a couple of hours, and it was a cold night. I didn't see any torch lights or campfires or any sign of people. Just the voices. As for the big cat thing, I read somewhere that apparently there was an eccentric circus owner who kept all kinds of exotic animals somewhere near the town of Hednesford, which is just on the southern end of the chase. Apparently he let a bunch of these animals free. That is one possible explanation I've heard of. However, there are a lot of big cat sightings in the UK, especially in the West Country, and pumas, for example, have very large territories. So who knows, it's entirely possible that there is a small breeding population living throughout England.
Ah, fair enough. Really weird that. Yeah, that could be an explanation. I reckon a lot of big cat sightings are just people misjudging the size of a big stray cat or dog, but there's so many credible stories that there's probably some truth to some of them. I think there have been a couple of confirmed cases of released escaped big cats being captured too, if I recall correctly. Ever had any paranormal shit happen anywhere else?
As it happens, I posted about an encounter I had in another thread. Seeing as that thread is dead, I'll just copy-paste it in here. There is this wood on the outskirts of London called Epping Forest. To cut a long story short, it was dark. I had my flashlight off. I had seen a herd of deer earlier in the night. I saw a head bobbing with glowing orange eyes, thinking that it must be another deer. I turned my flashlight on, pointed at the deer, and instead of a deer, it's a fucking guy with glowing eyes. He looked normal, like mid-30s, normally dressed with short hair. But his eyes were fucking glowing before I even turned my flashlight on him. Obviously, I ran the fuck away. He didn't follow me or anything. I only got one good look at him before running away. That shit was proper freaky, but other than seeing a UFO once, that's about it for outright paranormal encounters I've had.
It's just like UFO/cryptid shit. But I can't explain it, like I know it wasn't, but I don't have any other explanation. I had a couple experiences that even right now, as I'm writing this, are making my whole body tense up. Something similar to the Phoenix lights, 3 lights in the sky above me, each a different color, staying in the same position for a few minutes and then gone. And then the same thing on a different trip in the same area, but this time much closer to the ground. I know this sounds like some schizo/X/shit, but I'm just saying what I saw. And for the cryptid shit, well, I don't need to tell you guys, but when out in the bush for a while, especially at night, the eyes can play tricks on you, make you see things they probably aren't actually there. But like I said before, you know it can't be what you think it is, but every other sense in your body is telling you it is. Like how 3 roughly shaped dots can make a face in the right conditions. These are the only really noteworthy things I have seen. But my trips haven't been that extensive, and I haven't done it in at least 10, maybe 15 years, but there are things that you just don't forget. I have had many times where I had the "I shouldn't be here" feeling. But I don't even need to close my eyes. I can see those lights clear as day right now. I can see that cave. I just remembered the cave. I'm sorry, but this just hit me all at once. Long ago, I was trying to find an easier passage through an area out west, and I was climbing up and around the edges of some mountains, and I found a cave. Wouldn't look like anything from even 50 meters away, but when standing at the entrance you could see it went in a ways. Entrance was pretty small, maybe 3 people wide at most. I walked in only a few steps and that feeling hit me again, but stronger than ever before. It's as if I had entered a room covered in blood, but there was nothing to be seen. The passage was very long. I couldn't even see where it hit a wall. It just trailed off into darkness. I got out of there as fast as anyone could have. I went back the way I came and steered well clear of that mountain, probably added 2 days to the trip just so I could avoid that entire area.
My one paranormal story is when I was with some Aboriginal mates in the bush. A bit of background. Most Aboriginal communities work off 2 sets of laws. The best I've heard it explained is like this. Anon, do you see this coin pick related? See, this is how blackfellas laws work. There's 2 sets, the whitefellas law and the blackfellas law. Aboriginal people live in the middle. Be me camping, I got invited by a mate who is a part of some indigenous thing, and so a group of friends from the indigenous place came. I drive there and wait at the gate while my mate and the car full of his buddies come. They come in their car. It's also very clear one of them is drunk. He literally has a long neck in his hands. This guy named Mike also brought 2 extra beers for himself. We drove into the park on a fire trail that's been destroyed by recent rain. We get to our halfway point and we stop and start to set up for the night plus get dinner on the go. I bought some steak and a gas stove while they have sausages, onions and a skillet. They went out and got me some salt bush and some other shit for my steak. Anyway, Mike cracks out his 2 beers. Unknown to me at the time, Mike loved the drink and has been in trouble for it heaps of times for driving while drunk, fighting and all that shit, and the elders told him to stop. The cunt is like 6'6" though, so once he starts you can't really politely tell him to stop. So Mike finished his beers and we were basically just sitting around the fire talking about where the constellations are and shit. We see this flash of light in the bush. It was really fucking bright, and we were just what the fucking out in silence when one of the Aboriginal boys says, "Hey, that might be a spirit person, that fella," or some shit. Cue Aboriginals shouting in their language into where the light came from. Mike is fucking crying at this point because he thinks this spirit person is coming for him for drinking. After this happened, my mate said that they were basically shouting, "Mike will be punished when he gets back. Let the elders deal with this, please." We hear a branch snap or fall, which means that the spirit person has gone back to the dreaming or whatever. Next morning we leave super early, didn't even make brekkie or anything, just threw all our shit in the cars and drove out. Apparently Mike still drinks, but he doesn't go into the bush anymore. The elders punished him by calling the police on him or some shit too. Truly is wild as fuck out there. I believe that there's stuff out there, but I'm not a tinfoil yowie enthusiast. But like other Anons said, there's just some times where the hairs on your neck stand up and everything inside of you just says run as fast as you can in any direction.
I'll also just tell some. Be me, still in high school. Me and a friend decide to go do a 2-day hike outside a pretty big suburban area. The area is known for being dodgy, and the place we were hiking is full of burnt-out cars, junkies on dirt bikes, etc. Anyway, we just went to bed. Me and my friend were in separate hoochies and I had a wank for like 5 minutes and I was in that state where you truly feel alone in the bush. Out of nowhere I hear a 2-stroke motorbike in the distance. It kind of stopped for a couple of minutes, so I just assumed it was a bird. Birds make some fucking really weird noises here. Then I hear it start up again, and I hear it come closer and closer. All of a sudden it's so fucking loud, then I hear it cut off. I should mention at this point I was clutching a small shitty fishing knife like it was going to do something and shaking like fucking crazy. Then I hear footsteps walking around and some guy snorting. Then, all of a sudden my mate, in all his dumbness, goes, "Hello." Then I just hear the footsteps walk off. My mate rolls out of bed. I was paralyzed with fear, so I wasn't going anywhere and just shouted, "What the fuck, Gunt?" My mate then walks up to my bed and we go through the whole, "Did you hear that?" routine. My mate says when he got up there was an Asian guy in a singlet walking back to a dirt bike with some small Asian girl in a bikini sitting on it. Judging by how hard the power band sounded, they must have been going like 70 kilometers through the bush.
In the countryside, anyone and everyone keeps eyes on strangers. Got a story about one time I had police looking for me with a helicopter if anyone's bothered. Happens when I was out in some woods near Studland. Out, wearing mostly green and military-looking clothes. This is important later. Walking through woods, go past an old rusty barbed wire fence that was trodden into the ground. No signs or anything, and my map says it's a nature reserve, so I figure everything's fine and keep going. Get to the edge of the woods and come to open fields. Can see the river. Walk some more, decide to call it a day and turn back. Have a little rest in the woods, see some deer and cool birds. Just as I'm getting back near that fence I passed, I hear a helicopter. In the distance, I can see it's fairly low. Starts getting closer. Fuck, it's coming towards me. Fuck, it's loud now. The helicopter is like 30 meters above me. I start to walk, fairly quickly, away and past the fence again and back the way I came. As I'm getting back onto the main path, 2 cars speed up it. One a Land Rover all plain white and the other a BMW marked cop car. I move to the side to let them pass. They fucking stop by me. Tactically shit myself since I have 2 knives on me for out shit, but know the cops would freak still. Officer asks me what I'm doing and why I'm dressed the way I am. I literally say out for a walk as usual. Ask me where I was about 30 to 45 minutes ago. I say I was near the river. Guy takes my name, address, etc. and says they want to detain me whilst they check things out. I still have no clue what's going on. Start talking about the fence and how I didn't think I was trespassing, since I know there's a lot of ex-military shit in that area. Cop brings out this guy in a blue uniform. He sees me and looks at his phone and says I was there. Now I finally ask what the fuck is going on. Cop says they had activists, dressed in black and green kinda like me, who broke into a oil well, refinery nearby and attacked an employee. And there's a big police presence due to the military stuff, so basically everyone got deployed and I got spotted.
Not paranormal, but spooky. Grew up in outback Australia, old mining area with tons of mineshafts everywhere. Would occasionally see an SUV driving out along the dirt road at like 10 at night, then see it returning like an hour later. There is absolutely no reason for anyone to be driving out that area, especially at night. Still 100% sure they were dumping bodies down the shafts. Also, my mom said she had seen Min lights. Orbs of light that follow your car and stuff, but I never did. not Innawoods, but had some Canadian visitors to our property once. It was a historic mine and some other structures, a mother and daughter. They went into one of the old 1800s era buildings and both at the same time looked at each other and asked if we could see her too. They apparently saw a young girl sitting on a chair inside. I kind of feel like they had discussed it prior and were running some kind of scam. Had a few other stories, but none really noteworthy. A Euro friend of mine claimed to. I have seen a shit ton of supernatural stuff in German and Scandi forests, but I couldn't verify that myself though.
The thing about being out is that to a certain extent, the security blanket of civilization is gradually pulled off of you. It's not easy to quantify with words. But subconsciously there is certainly an element of caution, fear, respect that permeates you when truly out. Psychologically, we are conditioned to seek safety in numbers and the lights of civilization. If I recall correctly, Thoreau encountered actual wilderness in Maine and was left somewhat shaken by it. From a pragmatic perspective, in the absence of the arms of society, the mind will almost instantly return to the state of our ancestors. This means we begin to think in a fashion we aren't accustomed to. We load occurrences with meaning where normally we would explain them away. As a spiritual person myself, I have to wonder which is the true state. Is man in the wilderness a regression to savagery and idiocy? Or is man in the city merely dulling the voices of his nature and heritage with 1,000 modern distractions?
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.